Good morning, everybody.
Good
I do
morning.
try, I do try and find clean versions of these songs, but I'm not
Interesting.
always not always successful.
Hey, Margaretta's got
Uh,
moves, just so you
Margaret
know.
Margaretta is
She's
ready to
raising the
go.
roof.
Um, well, Friday it is. 5 days of personal finance. So hopefully there's been at least some stuff to open your eyes up, some stuff that you can think about, some ways to improve your personal situation or start to improve your personal situation. And today I wanted to get really specific on real estate agent stuff. So hopefully there'll be some input from you guys because I'm sure everybody's got little tips and tricks that can help or things that you're doing. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I kind of wanted to start with something I think it was Carolina who mentioned earlier in the week. When it comes to real estate specific, is it's the irregularity of our pay. So I think one of the things that you really got to focus on in this industry is knowing what you're going to do with your money when you get it, and not just winging it. Having a plan, creating a budget, having an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months worth of savings, knowing what those expenses look like. So just that's kind of bare bones basics for a real estate agent when it comes to finances, because it's just so irregular. So just throw that out, and then let's get into some more tactical stuff. So first thing that it should be pretty simple to set up, and I hope that everybody's doing, is just personal credit card versus business credit card. Right. I've always found that is the easiest way to kind of just separate what's a business expense. And I'll stop at kind of a lot of these different topics. Is somebody doing something else to track between what's business and what's personal besides two separate cards? Anybody doing something different than that? And then the other piece to kind of expenses and expense tracking is receipts. So kind of the common receipt tracking apps that are out there are Expensify, or QuickBooks Self-Employed is a pretty good one to track receipts. Anybody using something else on receipts they wanted to share? You definitely don't want to get yourself in a jam when it comes to tax time. We've talked about hiring a professional to do your taxes once you're self-employed. Separate business cards, tracking your receipts. Next topic that I wrote down was tracking mileage. The couple of top apps are MileIQ, TripLog, and Everlance. Anybody using something outside of those three to track mileage? Anybody using one of those three? Are you guys tracking your mileage? Jay?
Yes.
No, Jay. A couple of people raised their hands. What are you using? What do you like? I'm not familiar with these three.
No, I'm
Who wants
using
to speak on it?
MileIQ.
MileIQ. Have you tried the others, Jay? Is there just, if somebody's not tracking, maybe you could be like, hey, I like MileIQ for real estate agents because. Any commentary?
It's pretty easy. I mean, you get a spreadsheet at the end of the year, what's business and what's personal. You just swipe right for business, swipe left for personal, and then at the end of the year, it divides it into a PDF.
So what happens every time you pop in your car? It just pops up and says, this is a business trip or personal?
After the trip,
Okay.
it will round it up, and yep,
Gotcha.
you just swipe right or swipe left. Good dating apps.
Anybody using something besides MileIQ or one of those other two that I mentioned, TripLog or Everlance? And maybe you've tried MileIQ and you're like, hey, TripLog's better because of X. Did you try anything else, Jay?
No, I haven't tried anything else, and I think I pay for the year, so I think I've already paid.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with any kind of commentary on tracking mileage?
I like MileIQ because you can print it out and then you give it to your accountant at the end of the year. So when you're doing your taxes, so you do the left or right swipe, and then you can go into the app and you can print for the year. So, when you're bringing your profit loss statement to your tax person, you can bring that as well as a part of it.
Cool.
And also the MileIQ will tell, I think, let's say you set up for the office, it would, let's say it gives you that option of setting up where you go always. For example, you're going to the office every day, somehow it automates that.
Okay. Cool. So the next one that I wrote down here, I don't know. I think kind of people get into this industry and they just use whatever vehicle that they've always had, and with the amount of driving, I thought it would be pertinent to kind of talk about, what kind of makes sense for vehicles for real estate agents. Obviously I think low maintenance, fuel efficiency. I even think some of these electric vehicles like the Tesla Model 3, the Nissan Leaf are both pretty highly rated. On the fuel efficiency side, the top cars that came up in search were the Toyota Prius, the Honda Accord Hybrid, and the Hyundai Ioniq. Also Honda CR-V and Toyota Camry coming up under like low maintenance, low cost vehicles to own in the in that category. So I don't know if anybody else has done any research. I saw your question, Margareta. We'll get back to that. I don't know if anybody else has done any research on the vehicle stuff, or if you've made considerations prior to purchasing, but it adds up pretty quick. So if you know you're going to be in this business, getting one of these fuel efficient, low maintenance, or even electric vehicles, especially with Tesla, there's plenty of chargers. You're not going to get stuck anywhere. I think, I had the Ford Mach-E previous, and awesome car, definitely a little bit more limited with charging places. I think you as an agent, if you're looking for efficiency, I think the Tesla Model 3 might be the better way to go. We got a couple people rocking Camrys. All right. The lease for expenses, I think it's tough to lease in real estate, just because the amount of miles that you guys put on. If you're more listing heavy and you're not doing as many miles, maybe a lease could make sense. And when you're trying to figure out between the two, I think just literally running the two scenarios and figuring out what it costs. This is a great way, guys, to use like a ChatGPT or a Perplexity to just say, hey, I'm between these two cars. This is what my average miles are. Can you run some expense models for me to see which one over the next 3 years, would I make out if I do this many miles? It'll literally do calculations like that. When you're thinking about a big purchase like this, it's a great opportunity to use AI and let it run scenarios for you. And you can plug in even like, hey, I'm looking at this, whatever, the Tesla Model 3, and it costs X for 12,000 miles. It costs Y for 10,000. My overage is, 20 cents a mile. Can you run some scenarios for me if I went over by 2,000, 4,000 over the next 3 years? Whatever you want. And just let it keep running scenarios. Margareta had just asked back for the receipt tracking apps. That was Expensify or QuickBooks Self-Employed. Anybody using either one of those for tracking receipts? Wants to speak to those? Okay. Another key thing that I just thought needed to be on the list was you got to make those quarterly tax payments. There are fees that you're going to get assessed if you don't pay your taxes quarterly. So if you're working with a tax accountant, they should be setting you up on quarterly payments. And I know it can be difficult, but you don't want to get stuck, you know, at the end of the year having to pay it all, one, and B, getting hit with the assessment, the fee. I can't remember what it is, but it's a couple of bucks. It's not cheap. Anybody want to add any commentary around, you know, paying the quarterly taxes? Is there a tip, a trick, or something that you want to share? Okay. This is always a hot topic. So again, I'm looking for you guys for some input on this one. Health insurance. You know, I think this has been a tough one for real estate agents. Does anybody want to talk to this? That doesn't have a, you know, I think a lot of agents are in a position where they're getting it through a spouse. Anybody want to talk about the health insurance journey or what research you've done and where you ended up? For those that don't get this through a spouse?
Yeah, I
Sure.
will. I mean, I think.
Oh, KB. KB, you got to raise your hand.
Sorry, I'm driving and I was merging and I don't merge well.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. What do you got?
So I think moving from Florida to Massachusetts puts me kind of in a unique situation. The insurance industry, well, health insurance, when I moved here 10 years ago, was just very different than Florida. You have all these rules in regards to when you can actually apply for health insurance, and it's kind of overwhelming. And then when you are a household that has two, my husband and myself both were self-employed for a long time, so we didn't have any other options. So I think that in Massachusetts, obviously you can get health insurance through the association, through the realtor board, because we are all realtors. And I know that I did look into the NAR policies, and they're good, but they're really very limited to who they have coverage with, and they're just their policies are, I think they're just more expensive than what we have offered here in Massachusetts with just a connector care plan. I mean, for my family, we have a family of 4, and in Massachusetts, my boys were both covered by Mass Health until they were like 6, I think 5 or 6. And then we went to, so they had Mass Health, which really didn't cost anything. And then we went to a family connector care plan. And I don't know what regular insurance costs people normally, but we pay about $1,200 a month, and it's pretty reasonable insurance. I mean, my copays are super low. So, I think that if you're a realtor and you're in Massachusetts, you should definitely take a look at some of the connector care plans through the state, because I feel like they're the most affordable if it's the only option you have, because I've looked at a bunch of different ones.
Cool. So that's connector care.
Yep.
Connector care. Okay, Kirk, what did you have?
It's too funny. I'm going the opposite direction from Mass to Florida. So KB is right on. I actually used Mass Health for us for quite some time in Mass, and then went to the connector care, and we were paying like $9.92 for full coverage, you know, medical, dental, vision for 3 of us. And then when we moved down to Florida, what I found out is it's just more of an open market, right? So the Mass Health and the connector is kind of state-based, but here in Florida, they have really open insurance. So we actually have an insurance professional did all the research for us, you know, what plans, co-pays, all the other stuff. So our payment went from $9.92 in Mass to $6.80 here in Florida. So we were absolutely stunned and excited about that. It's been really good. Pick your own doctor, you know, low co-pays, just like anything else. Pretty awesome. But definitely research it, because there's a lot of plans out there.
Anybody else want to speak to this and their journey? Maybe somebody from Connecticut? All right. Well, KB, I think this is, you know, obviously we're going to do some Zendesk articles around all this personal finance stuff, but I think, you know, this is important stuff that we should have. Just, hey, here's what our agents are saying are the best options. It might even be worth putting out a poll. I think you're pretty confident in Mass. Kirk sounds pretty confident that, you know, hiring a professional in Florida is the way to go. Maybe we'll get some feedback on what the best option is in Connecticut. Just, you know, try and save some agents some time. on the health insurance stuff. Okay, next category that actually we're at the midway point. So I was going to finish up with tax deductions that we should be taking, right? So we talked earlier in the week about reducing our income as much as possible. We make 100,000. We want to try and reduce that down as much as possible to pay less in taxes. So I've got a whole category here on different tax deductions that you guys should be taking advantage of, but I do want to open it up for some real estate questions. Does somebody have, you know, something going on in a transaction that they really need some help with that's pressing? Okay. If I'm hearing nothing, let's talk some tax deductions. So first category under the deductions was vehicle expenses. And I think you really just got two ways to go. And I haven't done this in a bit, so I feel like my accountant just takes care of this, but I think you either have to pick miles, right? And you get whatever it is, 60 whatever cents. I think it's in the 60s now. Or you go the other way and you take all of the different things like repairs and gas and insurance, et cetera. Does somebody want to just confirm that I've got that right? You just go one way or the other, KB?
Yeah, that's what my accountants always said, one way or the other, and they've always told me that you're gonna get more back if you go with mileage. So I've always done that, but that's what I was told.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in?
That's correct. You're better off with
Okay.
miles than. So of course, I had my taxes done, and that's the way I did it. I think the suggestion of the accountant.
Okay. Margareta.
I've been doing miles, and it seems to work out okay. And I at one point actually had like two vehicles. One was for real estate, one was for my personal use. So if you just kind of like I'm terrible with mile counted, so I just kind of took a odometer at the beginning and towards the end of the year, and that was the miles counted.
KB?
I actually, when we get back to it, I have a real estate question.
All right. I think, yeah, let's see how far we can get through this. So I think these are important. So marketing and advertising, you guys got to remember anything that you're doing in that realm, right, should be, you know, track those expenses, putting it on the business credit card and reducing the income at the end of the year. So any photography, staging, ads that you're running, flyers that you're doing, you know, any extra software that you're buying, anything that is, you know, marketing, advertising related, you should be deducting. All of your professional fees and dues, right? So license fees, MLS, board dues, all of that. Any legal and accounting fees. So if you're hiring a professional, you know, and you're paying them $500 to do your taxes, you know, and you made 100,000, now you've made, you know, for taxable income, you've dropped it to 99,500. So you save up, you know, $150 if you're in a 30% tax bracket there. So it's, you know, all these little things add up. Home office stuff. So typically, if you can have a dedicated home office area, you can take a portion, and this is definitely talk to your accountant on, of all the different expenses that are going into that. So taxes, insurance, utilities, internet and phone, etc. So having a dedicated home office, I mean, that can add up to probably thousands of dollars over the course of a year. And let me kind of get through all the categories, and then if you guys want to chime in on any of these things, we'll come back. Any education or training, if you're buying, you know, books or CDs, books or live streams, or you're paying for a podcast, or you are, I don't know, going to a convention or a conference, etc. So any education and training that you're paying for. Client gifts and entertainment. So I think that the limit on client gifts is 25 per person per year. But you're doing an open house and all, you know, if you're doing food or you're doing, you know, I don't know, you go crazy and you do a food truck or you bring in some decorations, etc. Business meals and entertainment is 50% deductible. right? So if you're having meetings with a client or specifically to talk about real estate, make sure that is going on the business card. Any travel related with going to these conferences, obviously showings, etc., doing some research. Those were the major categories that I had for deductions. So, Jay.
What about larger expenses for if you decide, all right, I'm going to pay for the smoke cert and the detectors, like contractors stuff for a client?
That's real estate related, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think kind of a way to get it straight in your head is, if I didn't do real estate, would I have this expense? Right? If I didn't do real estate, would I have this expense? Oh, and then there's some stuff that, even if that is still the case, would you still have a home office if you didn't do real estate? I probably would, right? But I can still get away with, because some people wouldn't. Right. But yeah, I think for sure on your question, Jay. Who else has a question on deductions? Anything that I did not mention that you're taking as a deduction?
Paying people to show properties.
Yep. Great example. Right. If you need assistance, 100%. Pat.
When I first started I don't know if you can hear me. When I first started in the industry, I walked like 20 acres of land, and it was the wrong land. So I got this app called OnX Hunt, and it's like, I don't know, $100 a year, but I deduct that. Make sure I know exactly where I'm at when I'm on a property.
Can you put? You're a little jumbled, Pat. Can you put? Do you have the ability to text and put it in the messages what the name of that app is?
Yeah.
You could just put it right in there, because I think that's a unique scenario, and God, we don't want that to happen to people. So great share. Yes, KB, dues, MLS, realtor dues, any dues or services, legal fees,
Continuing ed.
Continuing ed, good. It's really important, guys. All of this stuff adds up. You're going to reduce your taxes, or your taxable income, by thousands of dollars by getting all these little $50 here, $100 there, $200 there. Go ahead, Sue.
Oh, even supplies, if you have a printer, paper,
Yep.
ink, all that, I write off.
Yep.
For my
Good.
home. Yep.
Good share. Jeff and Linda.
If you have any health expenses that are not covered by insurance, you can also deduct those, because there's a lot of treatments that aren't covered by insurance, and you can claim those for deduction, and those can really add up.
So I haven't heard that one, Linda, but I'm sure you that's coming from your tax professional. You've
It's
done
coming
this?
from my tax professional, and unfortunately, I had to do that this year. I had a sizable out of pocket for something that wasn't covered by insurance, and you absolutely can. So yeah, that's a really big one, in all honesty. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do something like for cosmetic procedures, or but something that's out of what considered voodoo by Western medicine, but there's alternate treatments that are very viable. Then you can do that.
Oh, good share.
Yes, acupuncture.
So did you have something else, or is your hand just lingering?
Oh, it's just lingering. Sorry.
All right, no worries. All right, before we go real estate with KB, does anybody else want to just talk personal finance for real estate? Something that we missed?
Oh, do you have suggestions for, people that are new for like tax accountants? Maybe some names that you can throw out to us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using Default Van and Corella. They're out of Springfield, fairly sizable firm. They've been great. They have a bunch of real estate clients. They seem to understand real estate pretty well. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in to just give a couple of options.
I used Kirk Sky last year, Zach from Grizzlack, right? I think that's what it is, Kirk. And he was awesome. I mean, he found some stuff that I didn't expect him to find.
Yeah, he's amazing. And he does, I want to say like 40, 50, 60 agents in the local area. I mean, he just knows everybody and he's amazing.
Good. Great share in the messages, Pat. So on X Hunt, just going to help you guys out with plot lines and stuff like that. Good. Jen.
Hey, sorry, I have a sore throat. I just wanted to comment on the health expenses for taxes. You can keep track of all of those things, but it's when the tax advisor does your taxes, it's going to be that expense or a different expense. So they see what's greater. So it's not like an
Yeah.
automatic deduction.
Right. Yeah. I think there is like a base level that you can take or something like that. And so if you exceed that, that's when, is that what you're referring to, Jen?
I don't actually
think there's
remember what it was, but I just know that they take one or the other.
Okay, so you cannot exceed $10,000 a year for any out-of-pocket medical expenses that you paid. You can deduct up to $10,000 in addition to your monthly, insurance premiums that you
health
pay.
insurance. Yeah.
Correct.
Cool. And obviously, guys, just if you're hearing something that you think you might be able to take advantage of, run it by your accountant. It's possible that different states or something, there could be different laws. So just run it by your professional. Jen.
I was just going to say about the car. So just ask your tax person about this too, because I was told that you can't go back and forth mileage and then counting like any other car expense. Once you pick one, you have to stay with it. You can't like flip flop every year. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. All right, KB, we're up against it, but we'll get your question in. What do you got?
Yeah, so I mean, it should be pretty quick. I just I have an agent who called me yesterday. They have someone who's going to be putting on 4 2-unit, I guess, condexes, because they're going to be sold individually. So it's going to be 8 separate listings. And I'm pretty confident. I've never actually listed new construction. These properties are not built yet. They have all of their specs. So I'm pretty confident with the answers that I was able to give him in regards to what he needs to include in the MLS. But one of the questions that I just have in my head, and I'm curious to see how it works, is when you sell a property like that, so it's a duplex, but they're owned separately, right? It's 2 different properties. How do you work out the insurance? Like, how do you work out who is responsible for, the roof and the siding and the pieces of the property that are shared when you have 2 separate buyers purchasing something that's not quite built yet? Does anybody know?
I mean, the condexes that I've dealt with, because I've sold a couple of individual condexes, and they had like a little, it's not an HOA, but they had something where they had some common shared expenses that, so they were getting, like the insurance through that. I think like the roof
Right.
was done through that. So is that what you mean, or is that like?
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I guess that's an existing property, right? So like
Yep.
there's already something set in stone. So when you're putting it on the market, you kind of already have your answers. What happens when it's brand new? It's not even built yet. You know what I mean? Like what does the listing agent, our agent, have to be prepared to instruct his seller that needs to happen before the property's even been built and put on the market and ready to go?
We got a couple of hands up. So Corey, I think you were first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe in HOA because especially because you're talking about a community now, you're going to create a common ground or common areas insurance policy, right? Like an HOA is going to have to be created if it's a community.
Well, it's not a community. They're 4 different units
But-
in different plots of land. They're
but on the
not.
same street, aren't they?
Oh, he didn't say that, but okay.
Yeah, I think they're on the
All right.
same street.
Okay.
But yeah, I would assume since the developer's creating them, there's got to be some kind of common. What's that other term that they call it? Not HOA, but there's another one. I'll have to get it. Shoot, something with a P, I think it is. But anyway, yeah, there's going to have to be a common policy for the community. I would assume.
In KB, in my
Okay,
case,
that's
it wasn't
kind of what
even,
I said,
it
is
wasn't
we'd have
even
to
a,
have this attorney.
in my case, it wasn't even a street or like a community, like Corey's saying. It was one condex that was just sitting there. And if you were going to build that, when the builder builds it, they have to create these bylaws or whatever that how this thing operates. And they had to get, I would think they would have to get that policy up front.
Right. So, I mean, my recommendation was that we need to talk to a real estate attorney, which is kind of what I'm reading in the comments. So I guess I'm on the right track. I was just curious to see if anyone has ever done anything like that because I've never seen that from the ground up, you know. So, Meg, you were going to be my phone call.
Jay.
I am actually about to list the condex, and the bylaws are in the deed, and there is like a HOA that was made, and it's in the deed, and they share a insurance policy, and that's also written in the bylaws. So there's that.
Yeah, I did mention the master policy. So awesome. Thank you. Margareta, did you have something?
Margareta?
Yeah, the big thing is because the town would have to have approved the project for the contractor. So the town will actually kind of dictate some of those things maybe, or whatever the contractor would have proposed, they would have approved it or agreed to it. So that would be the basis for the whole thing. There might be some flexibility on changing a few things, but that is like your guideline, I think, to start off with.
Awesome. Thank you,
Because
guys.
it would go in front of the planning board, and it's a big process to get there, obviously.
All right, guys, I appreciate everybody's input today. Lots of contributions. If you think of something that, we hit you over the weekend or something, we don't have to just end personal finance stuff for this week. I thought this would be something cool to cover. And obviously, if there's other things that like outside of the real estate world that, you want to see covered on these calls, let's do it. I'm open to, if it's not something that, I feel like my knowledge is strong enough, I'll do the research, I'll bring in an expert, I'll do something. But so if there's anything that you're like, hey, we need to talk about this, this is important stuff, let's do it, let's tackle it on this call. So no better group to do it with. Appreciate you guys. Have an awesome Friday and a weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday morning.
Thanks, Steve.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks.